So, good evening again. I will first start off by introducing myself. My name is Shane Cadogan. I am one of the members of the SVG Athletes Commission. The Athletes Commission, just to give you some preface, is implementation by the International Olympic Committee. And the International Olympic Committee has it that now athletes' voices have gone too long not being heard when decisions are needed to be made, when things that affect them need to be implemented. And so the International Olympic Committee now, through our NOC, is implementing that every sporting federation has an athletes commission. This way now, we will be able to work together as persons who are the ones being affected by the decisions that are made by the governing bodies. And it ultimately brings cohesion across the sporting landscape. Because as athletes, we do need to be able to have a space to sit to, whether it be coaches or administration, that this is what we think would be best for us. And so moving forward, this is what we want to be able to have across the board. So moving after this event, the Athletes Commission, which let me quickly introduce. The co-chairs for the Athletes Commission are Kiniki Alexander, who is a well-known track athlete, multi-Olympian, and Jason Doyle, who is a squash athlete. We also have myself, we have Mr. Michael Kwashi, we have Mr. Azik Graham, and we also have Mr. Terence Providence. Mr. Alex Joachim is also on the commission for swimming. And the structure of this commission started out by being an appointment by each of the sporting federations, and now, as a team, we have to be able to build together and achieve greatness together. So with that being said, I have some very great individuals up here to share the panel with tonight. Starting to the furthest right, we have Mr. Nicholas Sylvester, who is a Rio Olympian. He represented us in swimming. He is now a budding entrepreneur, so we're trying to teach that longevity after sports, because it's key to be able to know that outside of sports, there's more to an athlete. And I think Nicholas is a perfect representation of that. Then we have an esteemed track coach who, I would go off on a tangent quickly, but in my first Commonwealth Games, it was 2014, and I was 13 years old. And Chester Morgan was one person who took me under his wing. I don't know how old he was at that point, but it was truly a blessing to have somebody like Chester Morgan at the beginning of my journey as an athlete, because he is somebody who has a wealth of knowledge, somebody who I'm sure many athletes in St. Vincent and across the diaspora know that he has a lot to offer, and he does so in a very caring and mentoring way. And so I want to big him up personally on that ground. So that's our second panelist. Then we have Miss Amber Glasgow, who is a woman that wears many hats across the sporting landscape, somebody who I've had the privilege of traveling with, the privilege of competing at Commonwealth Games with, for example. And she now is actually an executive member for the NOC. She is the squash president, she is the squash coach, and she's also the co-chair of the Gender Equity Commission. And so her voice is definitely one to add value to this panel as well. And then finally, we have Mr. Tian Gordon, who is no stranger to the sporting landscape, someone who I've become more familiar with recently, but someone whose work I've been following for a very long time, because as a football enthusiast, it's a perfect way to bring a team together. Starts with the coach, and he has been able to mold that sort of environment for football and the nation and sports in general. So I just want to take that time out to quickly share those. We're going to be sharing ideas, and they will be sharing the journeys. But I just wanted to start off by giving my flowers, because I think a lot of what goes on in St. Vincent and a lot of what we know is that respect goes a long way. And I think this panel is a group of very, very highly respected individuals in sports, and so I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're about to have. So thank you all for being in attendance, live and virtually as well. So I just want to allow my esteemed panelists. I came this way, so I'll start from Mr. Gordon going back. I just want to know, and for the audience, what was your journey through sports? What got you to where you are today, whether it be starting as an athlete and then knowing that you wanted to be a coach, or So quickly tell us.
All right, so good day, everyone. Whenever you're getting a chance to see this, those of you here, good evening. It's a pleasure. Thanks again for having me. Good evening, guys. I hope we have some fun today. So for me, it basically started as a child. My father is into sport, my mother's into sport, so naturally I had to gravitate to that. From there, it was always being in sport. I was the youngest, then I was always the youngest every age group, and then obviously I had to lead, and in leading, then I figured out, okay, maybe I had to teach, and as a result, coaching became natural. It spilled to coaching because I got injured. It was a serious injury, so I had to watch a lot. So because I'm watching, I'm now understanding the context of the game a little better, and I'm understanding the relationships that has to happen. So that kind of molded me. So even when I went back to play, the context of leadership and helping others, that kind of expanded my growth. Obviously, I studied sports management and technology. That even extended it more. And in my personal development, it was always, how do I contribute to St. Vincent? How do I give back? And obviously, when I finished studying, I came back, and then the process was again to build. So I started teaching, and from teaching, it built and it grew, and then I got a lot more opportunity, and we're here today.
We're here today to tell the story.
Yep.
So, Amber, I know I hopefully didn't butcher too much of yours, but I'm really just interested in hearing from your perspective, because I attended the 2018, I think, Sports Awards when we had it at college, and Amber was also a nominee. And so I've been following you, older than me, of course, but following your journey and everything. So please share with the audience, how that got you to where you are today.
Good evening, everyone.
Mic check, testing.
We're good.
Yeah. All right, well, good evening, everyone. I'm happy to see so many athletes here today. This is for you. We are here to be your voice and hear from you your challenges and your story, and just to have that conversation. My journey in sports, well, I didn't choose sports. Sports chose me. I was born into a family who loved sports. So from young, I was always playing some type of sport. And when I got to squash at age 11, it was a sport that I just loved. And at the very core of my athletic career is passion. I just loved playing squash. So I never wanted to be a champion. I just happened to just love training so much that that discipline and that drive just got me to where I was at a junior and senior level. So I peaked when I was at university in the UK, and I was not just active at the university level, but I was at a club level within the county. And the national coach, well, the county coach there just saw the leadership qualities I had and really told me, you should also look at that transition when you go further in your career, because you could be a really good coach, the way that you interact with the kids. So he recommended coaching courses, and I was both an athlete and a coach at a university level. So when I returned to St. Vincent's, it was an easy transition for me. I was both an athlete and a coach, and then the demand was there for a female coach, because we did not, female representation is not there in sports. So once other athletes saw there's a female coach, we had more females coming on board. And somehow along that way, I became president of the Squash Association, and somehow I became on the National Olympic Committee executive. It's just happened. Like Theon, I suffered multiple injuries recently, and then so I decided it's time to take a rest and develop further administratively, and just take the lead so that others can come up and shine. And that's how I got here.
It's history. It's history. So definitely. Mr. Morgan, please DJ your track, buddy.
So basically, I felt after university, I was telling Tian that where I came from, never had anything, I never grew up with any rich parent, and I see what sport did for me. So I just wanted to do the same thing for everyone. But at the bottom line of it, that education is the foundation of everything that you do. Whether you are educated on how to train, how you should act as an athlete, and discipline is something that I believe that should always be present. I used to be very disciplined, go to bed, train on mornings by myself. In athletics, I was not disciplined because I felt that, okay, no one could beat me. I ran 800, I won, I laughed, but then I got a shock of my life. A guy just came out of nowhere one time in Bethel High School, just dismantled the whole thing, and then I went on to the national team, got selected. But I think that coach came from Kenya, and he went back, and then 2 days before traveling, they told us, well, you can't go. Next athlete has to go. And I vow that the children of the rural area, that will never happen to them as long as I'm alive. I know that they have the talent, because they're way talented than I am, but they're just probably not disciplined enough. So he got into that, then start working with athletics, came back home, start a club. When I met you in Commonwealth, it was actually my first game. But I'm not that old. So what happened during that time in Commonwealth was a learning process for me also, so that I try my best to see how best I can fit in. But on the whole, sports have done so many things for me. I can't be ungrateful. I'm actually used to be a juvenile delinquent. Run away from home for days.
And look at you
You
now.
name it. So if it wasn't for sports, I'd probably be in up Billy's lineman with them boys.
Yeah. And I think a lot of persons, especially your athletes, whether be live or virtually, respect you for that because they see themselves in you, and that's what makes them want to be better because you've been able to make a name for yourself. So that's key. Mr. Sylvester, this is a brother of mine who I actually went to primary school with and everything straight up. So he's an inspiration for me as well because he was the Olympian in 2016 and then I was able to go in 2020. So, just having that sort of camaraderie built from a young age, I think that's key. I think a lot of athletes appreciate having persons go on that journey with them because, that solidarity is really key. So please, your journey through, whether it be PE or all the way up, from PE to the Olympics, imagine that.
All right. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Shane, for that introduction. So, just like Shane said, I knew him from primary school. My journey in swimming started when I was 5 years old. I have a pool in my yard, and I never knew how to swim, but I wanted to swim in the pool. And my brother would always be splashing his feet in there, and he unfortunately fell into the pool, and my mother had to dive in and save him. And from that moment forward, she was like, no, you guys need to learn how to swim. So I don't know how many of you know Ricky Dean, but he and his co-instructor, Nasha, taught me how to swim, taught my brother how to swim, and we did lessons almost every day, whether it be by my house or we trained in at Villa Lodge. Shane would be familiar. Yeah, the beach as well. A lot memories. We trained at the beach where Ricky would then mark out the 25-meter line to mimic the 25-meter pool, even though that didn't really, feel like you were swimming in a pool because you're swimming against waves. But yeah, the journey was very bountiful. I then competed in my first meet in 2007, OECS championships. Could you imagine that? I didn't have that much experience. It was in Grenada. I didn't have professional gear. I swam in swimming trunks, the trunks that you go to the beach. Yes. I had no swimming cap, no professional goggles, anything. I'd dive in the pool, my pants would fall down. I'd have to pull it back up and continue the race. And I was just one of those athletes that you have to clap into to finish and help them finish. Yes, that's where I came from, humble beginnings. But by the time I was 11, I made my first Carifta Games, and I just kept improving from there onwards. I switched clubs. I joined the Black Sand Swim Squad, ran by Coach Kyle Duggan. And it's just been constant improvement. I've had a lot of challenges in my life. My mother passed away when I was 15, and she was my greatest motivation. And, a lot that follow that. I had to try and work things out by myself. You know, I have a strong support system, and that's why I'm grateful for initiatives like these, because, you know, it helps to support the athletes. And I then went on to represent in the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. My best experience ever. You know, there's nothing I would change in the world from that experience. And moments like that led me to swimming at the D1 level in the NCAAs. And unfortunately, COVID happened, so that ended my journey in that a bit early. But I then used a lot of my skills that I learned through swimming to carry into entrepreneurship. And here I am today. So thank you.
Definitely, definitely. So I think there's a lot of inspiration to go around, and each of them, like I said, have inspired me, so I hope that that could trickle down across the board. So I want this setup to be one where we have a reasoning, you know, like you said, Vincent Tomes, you have a reasoning, and, you know, feel free to just let the conversation flow. I'm going to ask just a few guiding questions so that we could kind of have some substance to the conversation. And one of those first questions is, what was some support systems or some support structures that you think that an athletes commission or each sporting commission can sort of revive or bring back or rejuvenate, or even some that are in place right now that might need some amplification, right? So those support structures, support systems, what do you think are some that really tapped into your progress? Yeah.
That's an interesting one. All right, so, but if we were to start where the support begins, it would then be in the home. But I don't think you could work on that one. But obviously you need family to really help you with that process. But all in all, the family outside of the house is another family. So if you live in a rural area, you have a better understanding of how the village raises the child, because once you wake up in the morning, it's more, you're on the street and everyone mixes and mingles, and it's more a family outside of the house. So that becomes a support system, because when you go astray, then the older ones then keep you back in line. I think that's key. One of the structures that has been eroded as well is church, because that also taught discipline and Sunday school. So you had a structure as well within that to help, because within Sunday school, you probably might have played some games, you interacted with other churches and so forth. And then from there, I think we also had scouts and boys brigade and that kind of stuff. I think those structures and systems have basically been eroded, and those systems are not in place. The other thing is, what I think the commission could really get involved in is the function of clubs, and how clubs then give that support system within the structure. So what we really have is a lot of teams, meaning if there's a competition, you pull a lot of players together and then that's it. In terms of the holistic development of the athlete or the player, that's why I think the club comes in. So if you have clubs, then the process of the academics, the process of socialization, the process of understanding what, where, and how, I think that's where the function of the commission comes in, where you have clubs being formed around the country to assist with that process that you would like to see to grow. So that would be my contribution.
It's a team effort across the board.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? So Amma, if anything to add?
Yeah, Theon spoke well about that support system, and from an International Olympic Committee level, that support system is what we call the entourage, the athlete entourage. And it is important that those persons that make up the entourage recognize that they contribute to the athlete. So it's not just the coaches, the medical team, your psychologist. You also have your friends, your family, your rivals. You don't immediately recognize it, but your friends form such an integral role in your development. They need to understand, sometimes when we have a tournament or championships coming up, we can't go out to your party and drink. There's sacrifices that have to be made, and your friends need to understand that, and they would immediately know, especially when you get older and you're old enough to drink. You're saying, I cannot drink, and they have to respect that rather than apply pressure on you. And rather than put you in a position where you feel obligated to attend and you're missing training, you have a set of goals to achieve and you have your plan set in place to achieve those goals. So first, the entourage, everybody needs to recognize, and you yourself need to recognize the influence of those around you. Immediately, though, at the core of your entourage is your coach as well. And in St. Vincent, this is just not enough to have a coach at one level. As you want to compete at on a larger scale, a higher scale, not just nationals, you want to have that coach that has elite training. And the Athletes Commission can now communicate to the National Olympic Committee to say, we need higher level coaches who understand our needs, who understand what it takes to get there. Because it's no longer 5 hours of training a week. Our competition is training 10 to 15 hours. And we need our coach to understand, or we need more coaches to understand that. So I think we need to expand the coaches and recognize who all influence our athletic career.
And I think with that point, I just want to also add, because for myself as an athlete and also trying to help the next generation, you can kind of see that coaches really are like the glue that keeps an athlete's journey together. If we don't have a good coach, it's probably very unlikely to really, there's intrinsic motivation, but intrinsic motivation starts from having somebody believe in you. And you have so many athletes now who I know appreciate you. So how have you been able to grow yourself as a coach, grow knowledge? So share your journey in terms of knowledge acquiring as a coach, because you have had Canuck and these things. So
well, basically started from me reading a lot. I believe that one day we should have an Olympian that is being made at home, and also the journey of seeing raw talent and knowing what the raw talent missing. But there's something that we keep missing, and that is the basic needs of an athlete. Most athlete needs love, but there are two types of love. There are tough love, easy love. Tough love can only get you better. So we have to start to nurture these athletes into telling them the world is unfair. You may work 5 years, get nothing. Someone work 10 seconds, they get more than you, but then your journey will be much better in the long run. Because you have to trust the process. But the coaches, as Amber spoke about the coaches, we need quality coaches. Having better coaches equal to better athletes in some cases. Also, at the NOC level, most of our coaches are volunteer. And, for example, in my case, most of the funding comes from you. Sometimes you sit at home and wonder how you get by the next day, but let that fight for itself. So many persons will not go through the same struggle, but I see we have a lot of raw talent, and I think the NOC and the Athletes Commission need to help the athletes be themselves. You go around the country and you're not seeing one billboard with an national athlete. So they don't really have any role model to look forward to. Like in case in Venezuela where me and Tian used to study, you go to the football court, there's a picture of the national footballer and from that era. So the kids may say, I want to be like that person. We don't have that here. So that is something that is missing, that we need to give them highlights. Kudos to the guy with the highlights of the different sporting event he doing it. Especially Naren, right? Especially one he did from inter-school. It gave you a sense of, okay, let me be better next year to come again. So the NOC has a lot of things to be done, but the main one is getting into the primary school. If you don't touch the primary schools, you can't go as a sport. And too many of our primary school children are being left alone. They can't clap, a basic foundation. So I started a project at the moment with working with a preschool and to tag the kids to see how they be in the next 6 or 7 years. So those are things that we need to work on. But the primary school and the coaches, two things I think we should focus on at the moment.
100%. And I think that same primary school thing, because for me, I was playing in primary school, I was playing cricket, football, athletics and stuff like that, but I mean, I was at Windsor, you understand? So there's a certain thing that's expected, but for that now to be something that is rolled out across the board is definitely key, because you have to start foundationally when your minds are moldable. You understand? That's where you learn in the most. Even if you don't see it right away, it pays off in the future, because those memories and those muscle memories are a thing in athletes, so you don't lose those sort of skills. And so, Nick, at the Division 1 level, we don't really have too many athletes from St. Vincent getting to that level. And so it definitely is top. So what would you say are some of the things you picked up on in terms of how they supported you as an athlete, or how they support other athletes at that level?
Division 1 is a totally different environment, completely different to what we're used to here. No matter how much I try to mentally prepare for it, I don't think I was. And especially as a student athlete, the life of balancing sport and school is rough. It's very tough. Yes, I train. When I'm home here, I wake up at 4 a.m. to leave home at 4:30 to get to the pool, to get in the water, freezing cold water at 5 a.m. Right? So it's no easy task being an athlete. I know all of you here know that being an athlete is no easy task, and it doesn't get any easier as you progress onto the D1 level. All you're doing is preparing yourself for that, but nothing really prepares you for that, and that's a good thing, because you know that you're leveling yourself up, you're preparing yourself to push yourself to that next level. If you want to be great, you have to do great things. So the D1 level, what is amazing about it, everybody there knows that it's tough, right? And as a result of that, they know they need to support one another to push through it. Waking up after you finish an assignment at probably 1 a.m. in the morning and having to wake up at 4 a.m. to go out in the cold, depending on where you are, it could be 2 degrees Celsius, you're walking with your parka and 3 layers of clothes. Shane can relate to that. To whatever sporting facility you're at, and diving into the pool. Temperatures would be, go into whatever field or track or pool. For me, the pool, once a year, because of how cold the temperatures would be, would actually break down. The heater would break down. And as a result, we'd still have to push through, because we have competitions to dual meets we have to compete in. We have to prepare ourselves for conference and possibly NCAAs. If you don't make NCAAs, you compete at the level below, which is nationals. I've competed at nationals at myself, and I could tell you, competition is crazy. And that's not even NCAAs, right? So these are the kind of things you want to push yourself for. Yeah.
Well, we said coaches, I think there's part of the coaching that I think the commission can work on. So for example, if we say there's a primary school, whatever, competition tomorrow, who's going to coach them? It's just any random person, innit? Any random person could show up and say, okay, I'm going to coach the football team, I'm going to coach squash, I'm going to do track. But what are they really teaching? I think that's where the commission could really put some policies in place where the school can't compete or the players can't compete unless there's a qualified or certified coach aligned to the program. Because what keeps happening is, like you said, you're molding them, and we're going to reinforce bad habits. And then eventually what might even happen is these persons stop playing because the coach not really helping the athlete, and they start shouting and they can't motivate and they can't reinforce. So it's about creating that process where if there's no certified coaches attached to the schools or whichever club it is across, whichever sport, then they shouldn't participate. Maybe that would then influence some change in terms of what knowledge the players are getting, and then the support system becomes different. So it's something we could consider.
That's key. And I think one other thing I want to touch on, because we have the primary school level, but I think another key thing that a lot of athletes appreciate is the secondary school, the inter-secondary school competition, because I think that the primary school level is one where, like you said, you need to have persons knowledgeable of these different sports so that the education foundation is there. But then when we develop that competitive nature, as Vincent mentions, that we have to learn sportsmanship and respect and all of these other aspects, that starts with the competitive level at inter-school. So I know just you have experience doing the inter-school coaching as well, so I don't know if you could share like how had that been in terms of providing a safe, or how we can provide more of a safe, competitive environment for athletes to hone their skills.
Well, I think there need to be some readjustment to the level of competition. For example, football, you play a maximum of 8 games, 8 matches. Some schools play 2 because they may not win any game in the group and they are knocked out of the tournament. I always say that the leeward side, when it comes to football, it's a very harsh area. We have a lot of quality players, so the school teams are actually working well. What works well for us in this school system is that there are community coaches who are doing a lot of work with some of the athletes. So then when they come to your school, in most cases, it's for you to really just harness them, because football and the leeward side is the #1 school. So it's very hard to get a child to be into track and field than into football. And most of your track athletes actually are footballers. You know, and that is something that we have to start with. We have to start to educate our athletes that this sport is for you and not because of your friend you want to play. So the inter-school level competition, at times I love to see it, it gives you bragging rights. And that is something that they strive. And there's a lot of camaraderie I'm seeing between different schools, and they are more supportive. But the competition can improve in terms of the number of games we play and the time. I still believe that sports should not be played at 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock. It should be on weekends so that they get the community buy-in. One year they started it where they played football at 4 on the weekends. Tian and myself played against each other, Bethel versus Barley, and it was one of the largest crowds we've ever seen in a group stage. Then the older folks, the older heads decided that
problem,
that is very dangerous. So again, we need persons in the decision-making seats that can see what sport can do for us and how we can shift this sport into being a better product.
100%. But I know I like similar story too, because like you said, especially as a swimmer too, it's like you put yourself into these environments. And I was speaking with Gaffer recently about being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And I think that's what we have to implement, not just as athletes or coaches, but as parents, guardians, pastors, just being able to put yourself out there, not being afraid of failure, but trusting the process and trusting that what you do is going to pay off in the long run. So instead of looking at the smaller picture of like, oh, I didn't PB in this race, or I didn't, do this, it's really about the process you have put yourself through, because waking up at 5 a.m. every day or whenever you have to practice putting in that extra mile, it does go a long way because, like I said, scientifically, these are connections you are harnessing within your own body the more you practice. So it comes naturally with more practice. And so to pivot now, I want to ask you, Amber, how do you think that a commission, or how do you think that athletes' voices can be amplified to these sporting organizations to bring cohesion across the board? Because it's kind of a situation now where we want to be able to come together as one and as one team, and I think that this starts that process. Continues that process really and truly. So,
initially, it starts with effective communication. We need to identify what our challenges are and what our personal challenge is, and we need to communicate that with other athletes, and this is where the Athletes Commission comes into play. Athletes Commission is the group of athletes where you want your voice heard. So once an athlete can identify, this is my challenge, you need to communicate that challenge to first other athletes and find out, okay, do you have a similar challenge? And then now you have this group and you go to your co-chair, and now the Athletes Commission have a unified voice. They are able to communicate what the athlete is experiencing. And they can even have their own solutions. The solutions the Athletes Commission might not have the resources or the tools available, but they operate under the National Olympic Committee. And now the National Olympic Committee has the workshops and they have the resources. It's a bit limited and from a developing area, more so because we lack the facilities, we lack, a majority of our work is volunteerism. So it's the demand, you can't really demand so much from someone who volunteers, or you can't really demand from a country with limited resources, or you can't demand that much from a country where a lot of our facilities and resources are under the control of the government or something that we cannot influence. But there are some available tools and resources that the NOC can tap into. You speak about the Olympic Solidarity, which is the mission of Olympic Solidarity is to assist the NOCs and to assist the Athletes Commission. So we tailor, to the needs of the athletes, and we can now point you into the direction of the relevant workshop or the relevant resources that we have available to assist you in and develop those challenges.
Definitely.
They do exist. They are there. We just need to know, and we need to just voice and communicate. So us in the administration, I mean, we used to be athletes, we still are, but the world is changing, and it's changing rapidly. So what we experienced growing up is not necessarily what you are experiencing right now. It's so different. So you need to communicate with us, and we work together. And I say us and we alternatively, but we just effective communication.
I think that's key, because an awareness of what is available, what resources you can tap into, and I think that's a big thing as well. And from a federation standpoint or from an association standpoint, Tian, like, how do you think as a coach, for example, as a coach, how do you receive feedback from athletes? Is it a situation where, I know probably back in the days, or in certain coaching styles, what a coach says goes, you understand? But now it's become more of like, and from my experience internationally, there's a line of communication and trust, like you always talk about, that line of communication that we always try and develop. Like, how has that been?
So what we have to do to transition from a commission perspective is look at a player-centered approach versus a coach-centered approach. All right, so when it's a player-centered approach, it's about how can I help versus you need to do this. So that's the difference now. So if we look at the methodologies or the strategies of coaching, if I tell you you have to do this versus how can I help, it's a total difference, and it works at different age groups and in different situations. There are situations when we could say you need to do this, and then there are situations when we could say how can I help, what you think is best. So it's like I go back to say it's about the education of the coach and what the coach understands and what they know. But where I get information from is about you cannot be out of touch with what the players are doing. So for example, I'm not necessarily a fan of the music, but I still listen to music to try to understand what they're expressing, what they're trying to figure out. I'm not a fan of everything that they do, but I try to go and try to be around them to have that conversation. You need to also take a look at their feeds for whichever social media, so you get an idea of what's happening and what's going on with them. So when they approach you and when you're having the conversation, it's always about how can I help, because now you've seen this, you understand this, you recognize this is the mood all the time, so then it's how do you help them socially to develop, right? And outside of that, it's always being willing to have a conversation, and we spoke about this earlier. Listen. Just listen. Just, how are you today? That's it. How are you? How are you doing? What's going on? Tell me. Forget about the sport. It's just, we're dealing with humans. It's humans really. So it's about what's going on? How you doing? And then from there, you develop that trust. You get understanding. Then they want to walk. Then they want to go ahead. Then they need to do what they need to do. All right. But I want to tap into something you said in terms of communication, and I think this is also what you could approach on squash, track, football, swimming. Yeah. I have a skill set that you don't have in your association. He has a skill set that you don't have and I don't have. So we're already small and we still operate in silos. So swimming sticks to swimming, track sticks to track. I stick to football, you stick to squash. But within each association, there are specialists in different things. So for example, he's good at anatomy and the function of the human body and how it moves and how it functions, right? My specialty is management and how to operate to manage an association and how it functions. I could assist in your process. He could assist with that. Then you have D1 experience, which is now we could look at the mental side. How do we assist football or whichever to then function? So we're small, but we actually have the different resources in the different places. So I think the commission could look at how can we tap into the different strengths and skill sets in the different association, and then try to see how this commission could merge the knowledge that each of us have to then trickle down to the different sports. So you could consider that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you mentioned the science behind it too, and I know you're somebody that pays attention to the science behind sports, whether it be nutrition or mental health. So what would you advise to these athletes in terms of that, the smaller details that really matter and the smaller details that often go under the mat?
One of the main details that these athletes in this day and age missing is the recovery period. So, as I explained to my club, when you're walking, you're actually destroying the muscle. When you rest, they're actually rebuilding, getting stronger, and getting much larger. But if you don't sleep or you don't eat well, that process will not happen. And then you will be training every day and you won't be getting better. So some of them think that if you come in training and you run hard all day, that I train well, I will improve. But your improvement happens before and after the session. So before the session, am I prepared? Have I drunk enough water? Have I done the right thing? After now, do I sleep properly? Do I spend time off the phone? Because this is something that was not in my time growing up. We didn't have the
media and social media
and so on. Now these new athletes think that the media is it. So posting a video about your change in your life and think, okay, this will take me through. I usually tell Tian that most of our athletes now, they like the fanfare of the sport, but not the hard work. So if I don't have a tights that match my top and my spikes, I am not running. If I have it, then I'm good. If I'm coming dead last, looking good, that's okay. But back in our time, you could come first bare feet. You are being treated properly. You know, so now these kids, they are more fragile. They don't respect, when I say respect, quality time. When I say quality time, they usually don't know how to communicate. You know, emotional. We have been taught that boys should not cry. Boys should be tough. But it's the opposite to it. We as coaches need to know who is Tian as an athlete and who is Tian outside. That is very important for us because the way you communicate with them will be different. Like for example, I may communicate with one of my child and say, come here, enjoy yourself, and that is okay. But in a different situation, it can't be okay because some other kids may not. As Nicholas was saying before, squash and swimming are rich people's sport. We're just making to tell based on the equipment. And I think some of our best swimmers, our squash players, are actually in the underdeveloped areas of the country because of the size. When it comes to sports and science, there are some things you as a coach can do. You cannot increase the height of an athlete. So if you can go somewhere and meet a 12-year-old who actually develop like a 16-year-old, then that is golden for us. I am not saying that he may be the best, but it gives you less work. So basically is we being able to give accessibility to everyone. You know, one time we came here and we did the the Olympic, they swimming. Some of the guys just swimming like they're crazy, but they actually was way ahead. But they didn't know what they could
Technique and all that.
Right. So that is something we have to work on. Get the availability for each sport to everybody. And the athletes themselves have to know that resting is the most important thing as an athlete. That 8 hours of sleep, it is golden. If you only get 2 hours of sleep, and they believe it's the day before the game. No, it starts 3 days before. Because you cannot recover like that. So that is just, sleep is my number one thing. If you don't have that, then can't be there.
100%. And I think, like you said, the accessibility really and truly is where it starts, because there's talent. There's talent wide and far in St. Vincent and Grenadines, even in the region. And I think that it starts off from, honing those talents, providing the resources necessary, or making the necessary connections with corporates in Vincent, for example, to make, clubs title sponsors, being able to allow workshops or clinics where you have athletes from rural areas can come and learn the different techniques and, spend time doing those things. I think that's a crucial point. And so I want to quickly just transition into life after being an athlete, or using the skills you've learned, because we learn so much as an athlete. We learn dedication, we learn discipline, we learn commitment, we learn consistency, we learn all of these words that carry weight, but it's more so that sometimes athletes don't know how to transition into what's next. So Nick, I wanted you to quickly touch on how you've been able to use those transferable skills in your entrepreneurial sort of avenue that you're following now.
Right, so to make everybody aware, my entrepreneurial journey involves financial markets, analyzing and trading, right? And through this involves a lot of risk. And to prepare yourself for risk, as athletes, we do involve ourselves in risk every day. We have to sometimes wake up at hours that we normally wouldn't. Like I had to wake up at 4 a.m., like I said. We push our bodies to the limits, like Chester just alluded to. A lot of athletes don't take in the amount of rest that they don't actually take the recovery process seriously enough. And that is a risk on your body. You can suffer injuries. And so understanding risk, using my sporting experience and understanding the core values, like you just said, consistency, dedication, just knowing how to appreciate the long-term results rather than wanting everything, rather than overestimating the short-term results, being patient, being focused, being present. All of these things can translate into whatever it is you decide you want to do in life. And for me, in my entrepreneurial journey, these type of core values, I use them every day in life, but especially in my entrepreneurial journey. And I think that it's important to remember those aspects of your sporting career as you try to transition beyond sports, And I also want to add to that, I think it's important as an athlete to don't identify yourself just as an athlete. It will be very hard to transition from that athlete to the person or the professional if you just solely identify as an athlete. It's very hard. And we do have a lot of athletes that suffer from that because, we all are ambitious, right? And we want to achieve greatness, but really and truly only 1% really gets great, right? And that's the reality of it. That doesn't mean no one in this room can't achieve greatness. Everyone is destined for greatness in whatever form it may be. But they may not be through athletics or sports or whatever. But you can use that ambition to be successful in another area. So don't solely identify yourself as an athlete. Identify yourself as an athlete, but also as you, the person.
That's true. Big up for that, Nick. And I want to popcorn that same question to you, Amber, in terms of like the transition. You are now in the administrative part of a sporting journey. So how has that allowed you to stay dedicated and focused from having that background of being an athlete?
Definitely from having that background of an athlete, you have empathy and you have understanding of what your athlete is going through. So you are more concerned about your athlete's well-being and you want to be that person you did not have. And that is what drives me in my position as the president or the coach or the manager or whatever hat I'm wearing on that day. I do it for the athlete that I once was. I see that in my athletes today. The transition was seamless because my understanding of sports is already there. All the foundation, the core values, as Nick said, they are intrinsic in you. You develop them over the years, and you actually work on them every single day as an athlete. So, you're a student and you go to school 5 days a week and you're finished with that. But the hours you spend as an athlete is astronomical. Nobody really understands what it takes to get to the level you need to be. And you are constantly reinforcing the values. And when you make that transition, you have already developed these attitudes just to make it happen for the athletes. So it is pretty seamless. It's there. It's inherent in you because you've developed it. And now you don't just do it for yourself. You do it for them. And that is what keeps you going.
And then, Theon, I know your big focus as a football coach, even as a coach, a life coach, is that you focus more so on the interpersonal skills or the individual and that. So please just share a little bit about how that's so critical, or the mentality of an athlete, the mindset of an athlete.
If you think you can or you can't, you're correct. I'm going to say that again. If you think you can or you can't, you're correct. Exactly. So if you think you can do it, you're correct. If you think you can't do it, you're also correct. So for me, it was always, when you listen to how we approach sports in St. Vincent, it has always been, they are from the Caribbean, they're black, so it means they're fast, they're strong. It was never where it was one where we were smart enough, we were skillful enough. It was always, because they're black, then
Physical.
it's physical. The approach was always physical. But then when you go and you play, you realize the physical is not really the point. It's what you believe what really matters. And living in Simmons, you recognize that our reflections or reinforcements that we get from the public is always negative. So it's you can't. So in your head, it's always you can't, you really can't. So then you believe it. So for me, the context now has always been, yes, we are physically strong. So now if we're physically strong and we fast and whatever else, what if we add the mental side to it? It's unstoppable. So the process now for me has always been, how do we change the mindset of the people? And it goes back to what I said. If you think you can't, you're right. If you think you can, you're right. So fixing the mentality of the athlete is first for me what is really key. Because then, if they believe they can, now they could concentrate, now they could focus, then the physical side is easy because that's what we do. So then, from a tactical perspective, can they follow instructions? Can they get it right? But because we've been reinforcing to them, it's physical. We fail to recognize that the game and the sport is based on decision making. So it's not physical. It's what decisions we make during the process of playing. So if we get the mindset right, then the quality would come out. And that's where my focus is trying to go now, to get coaches to realize it's the mind, is how we're able to convince the players and the society that yes, we can. So that's really my take on it. Yeah.
And so with that brings us to an hour of discussion as a panel, but I want to now open up the floor for live attendees or virtual attendees to, feel free to ask questions that you think are critical, or even if you know somebody up here or you want to hear advice from somebody up here, just feel free to, this is just a reasoning, we're just all here as one. So just put your hand up, or if you're on live, virtually, please comment any questions you might have, so that we'd be able to then, talk about those things. So is there anybody right now in person? Any questions, comments? Grab a hand there.
Right, so, so the Athletes Commission obviously is there to provide a voice for the athlete, which is very, very good. It's definitely necessary. But I'm wondering whether the Athletes Commission would also have within their tools and within their arsenal some sort of way to assist the administrators of the sport. Because since a lot of times the administrators are also the coaches. And as an administrator, you have a particular vision in mind. This is where you want to carry your sport. This is where you want to carry your team. And then the team says, well, I don't really like how you present as a coach. There is a very real risk that you start to get a lot of negative pushback, which is unnecessary, but this is the human element that we were talking about. So if you can address that, is there anything that might be coming within the Athletes Commission that can assist administrators in this area?
I think that's a great question. And I'll first, as a member of the commission, and then I'll allow the panelists also, but I think that one of the key things for us right now as a commission and athletes' voices is that cohesive nature. And I think Amber alluded to it as well, but a lot of our strength comes from the governing body, so that's the NOC, and then within each commission of each sport, that's going to come, like you mentioned, from the administrative standpoint. So to answer that question, I think that the resources that we can tap into as an athletes commission, and then furthermore as a administration, it starts with building that communication. So if that communication is built between, yes, it's the OC, the NOC, and then the Archery Association, for example, then we then want to be able to have a database, for example. Every time there's a coaching clinic going on, we want to communicate there's a coaching clinic going on. So once you keep people informed, I think we also spoke about KPIs, key performance indicators, but in my opinion, that also means keep people informed because, just like this forum is, we want to be able to raise that awareness. So these conversations need to happen. And so it starts from, like I said, building that bond between the organizational body and the commission, and then from there, we'd see what resources develop from there. But Amber, from an administrative standpoint, what's your opinion?
From the National Olympic Committee level, there are a lot of resources and tools available for the Athletes Commission. So once the Athletes Commission identifies that we need to strengthen our administrative capacity, we have a series of workshops available first that is available for every affiliate under the National Olympic Committee. The Athletes Commission works under the National Olympic Committee. So that is where it first begins. And it's not just workshops, but you can now progress and actually get your administrative personnel can actually develop under certain scholarships and at a university level just to get at that elitism that any sports can require. The National Olympic Committee has empowered and actually sent a number of admins to be educated and be informed already. So you continue that in that capacity. Yes, there are workshops, there are scholarships, there are programs, there are degrees and diplomas available for our administration under the National Olympic Committee. So we have that.
Thank you, and thank you for the question as well. Do we have any other questions from live or virtually? Comments, feedback? Didn't go well, it went well, you learned a lot, you didn't learn anything, fell asleep, didn't fall asleep, nothing? I'm looking at this group here because this is all the athletes, but go ahead.
So this was part of my question, and it's based on what you're doing there. Do the athletes want a coaches commission? A commission, an athletes commission.
That's true.
So that question itself was one. When you spoke to me about it, I was like, the athletes in St. Vincent generally, because of culture, they keep everything to themselves. They don't necessarily communicate. But do they really want an athletes commission and understand what the process is and what the power would give that it would give them. And like you said, I think communication is important in letting them know, okay, then this commission exists and this is what is possible. But from their perspective, that would be an interesting question for them to answer. Does it make sense for them?
Nicholas.
I think
One, right. I do think, I mean, I am semi-retired, but I do think athletes would appreciate an athletes commission, whether or not they believe they want it.
Yeah.
But I do think they would appreciate it by things like this, a forum to educate and bring about awareness about what it's about, what it's truly about, and how we can benefit them.
Yeah.
I mean, just simply having a voice to be able to, I guess, impact decisions or policies that can help them progress. Of course, who wouldn't want that, right?
Like you said, but
one of the things I think they need to understand the function of the commission.
Yeah.
I think most coaches and most athletes, their main interest is when selection process time, or if there's something to be given away. But they need to know that they have a voice, because at the end of the day, Tian and I could put on a competition to say, this is how we organize the competition. But you, the one who are competing, need to tell us, hey, 5 minutes before my event, I need this to happen. So that is also part of the process. So you must help them to understand what are their function or what power they have. So that is one of the things that we need to communicate clear to them.
And I quickly want to plug in as well as for athletes and live and virtually, that there is a platform that's available to all athletes and that we as a commission are planning on tapping into more. It's called Athlete 365. And I think this is actually a platform that originated in the Tokyo Olympics, if I'm not wrong. But this Athlete 365, the 365 basically dictates that as athletes, we are responsible for carrying ourselves or voicing our concerns every day. We go through the process every day. We are the ones in it every day. So being an athlete every day is really critical. So this is why I think that having that voice, and like you mentioned, the selection process is one of the key things, because the function of an athletes commission is to, when you have these board meetings with the administration or the board of each federation, there needs to be one athlete representative on each of these boards. That is the stipulation by the IOC. So with that one voted within each federation's athletes commission, you then select one person to be on that board. And then when meetings are taking place with like selection criteria, which is a big thing, or how resources are allocated, that's really what the key and the cohesive part of it will be, because like you said, selection, that is something that the selection process is something that a lot of athletes, either agree with or don't agree with, right? And now we have the power to be able to be in that setting and say, look, from my perspective, like you said, 5 minutes before, or even like setting up a competition, you want to be able to allow them to have a say in how they perform by the structure that's in place, right? So that's key. I know we had a question in the audience.
Good night. My question.
Studying on.
My question goes to the chief coaches, Mr. Morgan, Tian Garden, and Ms. Glasgow. What strategies do you employ or put forward to maintain team morale and cohesion during challenging periods? Meaning, how do you keep the team spirit high and ensure that the team remains united and focused when facing difficult situations and setbacks especially?
Great question. Thankfully, I'm not there. I'll let take it. Chester, go ahead.
Send home everybody. No, basically, you as a coach, there are times when you may not know what to do at the given moment. For example, in my real life situation, most of our girls tend to be at war, you know, and sometimes you realize you just have to let it fade out by itself. Let them know that, okay, you're not dealing with it. And because it's a competitive nature. So in team sport or in individual sport, there always be differences. No matter we are an athlete, we feel that we should be treated special, but that is not the way. So one of the things you do is try to have outings. We usually do like go to the river, go to the beach, play fun games. Those are all sort of team building. Allow the athletes to speak about what they want at certain given times. Allow them to express themselves, and you listen to know what is happening. I may say it's one of the points where I need to improve on, because the nature of my community and my club, it's that there are many kids, so then there are so many to deal with, and that you don't know what to do at times, but to just let it fade out. We are humans, and at times we don't have the perfect answer when it comes to that. But basically just do things outside of the sport, because as Tian mentioned, they are not robots. They need to have fun, and that is one of the things the athlete need to realize. They have to balance their social life, their track life, their academic life, and put them in one basket and still be there.
Other coaches, any people?
Similarly, you have variety in your coaching. So you don't always keep it difficult and challenging every single time. Some days will be low and you have fun, but you're still training. Some days you just, instead of being on the facility itself, you take them somewhere else. You take them outside and you change the routine, that monotonous routine that they're accustomed to. And just give them that literal breath of fresh air when they go outside, and introduce a different way. And you see instantly a different way they interact with themselves. And you also include group activities, or you put them in pairs rather than having them work by themselves. And recently, what has also worked is I create a safe space for them. So not only do I go to them as a group and say, how is school? How is your interaction? How do you feel about the competition? And having them talk to me about it. I also bring in someone. I brought like a yoga instructor. And for the past 3-4 weeks, this yoga instructor would come and just have them sit on the floor, and I would step away. So if there's something that, maybe I'm pushing them too hard, you now have that safe space to share. And that person also said, whatever you say to me today, it stays between us, but now you can vent and you can talk about it. And through just talking about it and that interaction in that group setting, your teammates can rationalize with you and tell you give you a different perspective of a situation that you faced. And that has proven really effective. And immediately after those sessions, you notice an improvement in their physical output. So that safe space, that working with their mental health, and as well as we had a safeguarding session. And it's not always physical strenuous. You mix it up, you take them somewhere, you bring in other people. It's not just one coach every single time. We all have something from different sports to share. So that's effective methods that we have.
Anything to add?
Is there any specific scenario you would like me to address? Or did they approach it the way you want it? Because I have my way I want to answer it, but I just want to know if it's just in general. Okay, so let me try to understand the context of the question. So how do we maintain morale within the group, team spirit, and also more so after a difficult time? So let's say you lost a track meet or you lost a game, basically. That's the context. All right, to start with, generally, my approach is always, what is the mission, what's the vision, what's the philosophy, What are the values we're trying to work with, right? So as a group, we have to decide on that. Once we decide on that, this is what we live by. Now the task of each session is to develop resilience. So every day you try to make it harder. So as it gets harder, you build your mental capacity. And within the training session, there must be an opportunity for you to lose, and you will learn how to lose, and there are times when you will win, and you learn how to win. But then the other side of it, what I've recognized is people show up and they still don't even know that this is Shane. They don't even know who the person next to them is. They don't know anything about them. So the next side of it now is, how do you get them to realize that this is a person and not just somebody who comes to play with me or run with me? So it's you then have to create a relationship where they know. I have to know their names, know their family, where they're from. I have to recognize when they're bad, when they're good. So you have to develop the relationship within the group. So once you develop the resilience now, with the training, and then you develop the relationships within the group, whatever happens, the context is different. Because part of the philosophy has to always be, what's next? What's next? And as a group, if you decide what's next, then what happened wasn't important. It's how we move forward again. So that's my process. All right?
That's key. And I think the buy-in, you always hear about buying into our vision. And coaches always try to get athletes. For myself as an athlete, coaches always try to get you to realize that once you buy into a process and you trust that process, then the sky is the limit, because it won't always be roses and daisies. But, there's times where the hard work must pay off, because, you only get out what you put in, understand? So you have to be able to have that balance. We have another question in person, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a question. Good afternoon, everybody. Nicholas and Shane, if the coaches would like to chime in on this also, feel free. Just out of curiosity, seeing that you both competed in swimming in collegiate careers, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast of the United States, for somebody like me who forfeited their collegiate career, for the virtual listeners and the athletes there, how would you describe the sacrifice that you guys made being worth it? How would you describe that to,
Nah.
You spoke about sacrifice earlier, so I just wanted to.
Isn't sacrifices in regards to putting yourself through?
Yeah, considering going the extra mile that you guys did to go and complete your.
Well, first and foremost, COVID set mine short, really and truly. So there's that. But at the end of the day, it's about how much you want it. It's like a few of them alluded to, mindset. You need to have that mindset first, and then you could physically go and do it. You have to know your why. You need to know why you're doing it. What you want from it. What do you want to achieve? Do you have certain idols that you aspire to be like them, or how do you plan to achieve your best self? But yeah, just knowing your why, that's how you really push forward and complete whatever task it is you want to complete.
Before, when the question was asked, Tian and I watch each other, because we went to a university with a different language, one. Two, I show many persons who have never ate egg and rice, as if we spend 10,000 days in a country, we use rice every day of our life. Situation whereby you may put a shoe outside just to go back inside and get a bottle of water to move to training. When you get back there, the shoe is no longer there. To the athletes, you have to push through. There are days when Tian and I and Az and Gary will sit together and say, yo, me ain't going back there, you go meet nobody who say me a punk. So without current for 3 days, you have to go down by the river to shower. I go in, because, and that is something that our athletes are missing. That they think that scholarship means that you are going to a 5-star hotel, that you are going to have the best meal of your life. But actually, dog eat dog. A pan of salt biscuit is golden at university. A sardine is like $1 million, and and we have to really, this forum is one whereby some of these athletes don't know how much you went through. And that is when we finish. Tian and I sat and I say, I'm going to buy myself a big TV, a big couch from my first pay, and lay down in it every Saturday and watch football. Because there are nights where we can't sleep, no current, no water. You show up at school and the student them decide they're gonna protest, so they just burn some rubber tie in front of the class and you have to go back home. So those athletes, the athletes that are here present, scholarship is not a bed of roses. Put it in the back of your head. But if you want to achieve anything, as long as you put your mind to it, you will achieve it. Things will start falling in place for you. So we learn to cook for ourselves. We learn to be brothers. We develop relationship closer to each other's. That we used to watch the calendar and shout every morning, 300 more days to go home. And so, it's really some of the stories you don't want to hear because they're so painful. We used to tell each other, boy, if we mom you only know we were going through, could you imagine you stand up 6 hours by a bank to collect $100 just so that you can have money for the rest of school? It's really hard. We had one computer, we had to share it around. Then there was the thing of the language barrier whereby you go to greet somebody and they calling you monkey and you don't even know, and you smiling until you start to understand the language and realize, yo, this ain't working, this is what's happening. So to the athletes who are present, those in person, do not expect a better roses. Scholarship, the coaches out there, they only care about the result in most cases. So I pay you. I don't care how many exams you have. You have to show up the next morning to training and go right into exam room. We had a football coach used to tell me, just properly when you come training time, I have to go straight exam one time. You're in the gym walking out and you have an exam in 20 minutes. Those are things that you have to get ready for. But one thing it did, it changed my life drastically, because as I told people, I never under pressure, because the university we went,
Serious.
the pressure you were under every day to hand in home assignments and group work where man telling you they're not doing it, they're gonna drink beers all night, and if you want to take this year, you take it. But we're from the Caribbean, and so it's not easy. Not easy.
No, I think that's true, and I could only piggyback so much from that too. But what I want to add to that too is that once you have a belief in yourself, it really cannot go wrong. Like, especially when the times get hard, because, for example, for swimming, being frank with you, swimming is worldwide, globally, it's a predominantly, let's say, Caucasian sport in terms of Americans, but what we want to do is to show that we have that same sort of impact, we have that same mentality, we have that same physical prowess. And so for me, in university, I was in California, in San Francisco, Silicon Valley. I was the only person like myself, but I never looked at it like that because I'm a human being. Everybody's a human being. We're all one under God's creation. So it really is just you being able to put things into perspective as an athlete. You finding those roses in the bad moments. You finding that bigger picture. Because, for example, being at the Olympics in 2020, there's a mutual respect that you experience as an elite athlete. That mutual respect, like you mentioned, these two working together to get through Venezuela. Myself and my teammates are working together to get through the hard times that we had to go through. But once you have that team behind you and once you have that belief in yourself, you really can't stop that. You really can't stop it. So, yeah. All you smile and wave, you say it on this bread. So it's true. You just have to, it isn't easy. It really isn't easy, but there is, like I said, you get out what you put in. And you have to be able to find it within yourself to get past that sort of the defeating stuff that come your way every time, the obstacles, you understand? So it's really just about finding that why, like Nicholas said, and believing in yourself and seeing the bigger picture of how you could really reap benefits from being an athlete and being an individual with goals and a certain mindset. So I think that's key, for sure. Any other questions from the audience? We have one here and then one behind there as well.
This question is for the coaches. How do you work around and manage different personalities and blend them all together to have a successful team?
Very good question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Any particular sport? Squash? Okay. All right.
Every sports day.
No, I know. So I want to start from squash and then build into the other. So, all right. So, as a coach, you first have to recognize that they are humans first. So that means there's a personality, there's a character. So you understand that. Then you recognize what is common between them. So squash would be the underlying thing, but then it might be this one likes this one likes this, and whatever the case. So you try now to see how best you can marry that together. The other side now is having the persons interact consistently. If you don't, then there's differences. Because the more they talk, the more they recognize there are more things that are similar. And as they talk, then it becomes easier and then the relationship grows. From a tactical perspective, that's the other side of it now. So do I pair two introverts together, or I pair an extrovert and an introvert? So in your squash, the intention now is how well will these two play together when they are playing because of personality. So you might match them by personality. In other team sports, so like for example football, if you think about personalities that are selfish, those who like to share, those who are quote-unquote bossy, then you start looking at them in terms of position. So you know, a striker is going to be selfish. So you put them to play strike because they're going to be selfish. Those who like to share, you put them in the middle because you know they're going to be better leaders and they're going to work together. The ones who are always aggressive, you put them in the back because you know they're going to protect what you have. So now you have on the personality of the different persons, the type of sport, and then you try to match them based on the tactics and the relationships you have with the players. Yeah?
Anything to add?
Well, the difference what Tian and others have is that I'm actually a physical education teacher and actually the coach of most of the athletes. So I know them in different folds. So I know how to approach them. But one of the main things I realize is that in order for the team to work, you must show that, okay, this could work. So they may not believe in a process, but you have to get them believe in that. So some of the athletes may say, okay, if I come to training early, this athlete might be better and I don't want them to be better than me. You now have to create a system where everyone support each other, no matter what. And I usually tell my athletes, if I am on my social media page and I'm doing well, and you are not sharing my success, it means that we are not actually friends. It means that you're actually an enemy, but you're here with me. So those are some of the signs. So you get them help each other to promote each other, because there's no I in team, as we say, right? But sometimes you have to slip the I in before I team, because you have to put yourself as an individual in order for the team to function. There'll be some person who come to training and say, okay, I will handle the cones, I will handle the water, I will handle this, in order for it to function. But you know, there are some who may not do anything. No matter what you do, they don't want to be part of it. But you as the coach now have to see who are the leaders, who are the ones who will get the job done, no matter what. And you have to reward those who are leaders. Let's be real. I can't be working extra hard and Nicholas doing nothing, and then there comes a point when we are giving tokens, Nicholas got the best. No, you can't. No, I usually hear people say, you have to love each athlete equally. No. Some need more love. Some do need more love than some. Some may come from homes where they are protected. They don't need that love. Some come from violent homes where you have to show them, okay, you're beautiful, you can do it, and so on. So it already boils back down to knowing who is John, who is Jonathan, and who is Jonathan's friends, and which household he came from. So that's how you work with it and get it to work together.
Crucial.
I want to add something else, yeah? The team is a reflection of the coach. The team is a reflection of the coach. So when you see them, you would know that's Tian. That's Tian there. You see them, that's Chester. You see them, that's Shane. So it starts with me as well. So how I behave in every single situation, the players are learning from me and what I'm doing. So if in a situation I'm always unfair, they pick that up and they say, oh, you have favorites, yeah? And then when it's time to discipline, then they recognize, oh, this is... And then when they recognize I'm always cussing, what do you think they're going to do when they're playing? It's the same process. So it always starts with the coach. The team and the player is always a reflection of the coach. So as the coach, you first have to know how and what I want to be and how should my team look. And then you start putting yourself in that mold consistently. So it starts with me first as well. Yep.
All right, so I think that we will take one more question from the in-person audience. I don't know if you guys experienced this when you were doing it as well, but like sometimes you get to a point in your career and you realize that this coach can't take you any further. But like because of your loyalty to them, like you don't know how to go about leaving. So like my question is like, what advice would you give to like the younger athletes who like experience this problem?
You have to be careful with that question, eh? No, what I'm saying, I may be a young athlete, and because there are certain rules and regulations within that camp that I can't handle, right? I usually tell all my athletes, if you feel this is not the environment for you, you can move on. Because I want you to be happy. If you're not happy, then you can't produce anything. So if you come and you say, oh, they usually use a term, I only come in because coach. No, you're not coming because of me. Because of you, what you want to achieve. Yes, we as coaches have to realize that there are times when you cannot take the athlete any further. We have to realize that. But we are men, and there's something called ego, and we have that. But you as the athlete has to be honest. Coach, thanks for everything. I think that we have reached the bridge whereby you can't take me any further, and I need to go elsewhere because you have one career, one life to live. So don't wait until you're 50 to say, should I don't leave here? No. To all the athletes here, if you feel uncomfortable with a club, a coach, you can speak with that coach and move on. It won't cause any issue. I always say, I'm not thinking about who leaving, I'm thinking about who coming. Because it may sound strange. In my system, each year or each 5 years, those athletes are used as a rabbit. I try a system with you, see if it works. If it don't work, the next group coming up will be better than you. The next group that comes becomes better than you. So you have to, as an athlete, you have to be brave enough to have that conversation with your coach, your parent, if you're underage, first and foremost. But don't leave because they're keeping you in line, being disciplined. No. Leave because you see that, okay, you show up to training, the coach is not there, there's no program. Those are things you leave for, but not like you sitting there and the coach saying, hey, every time you come to training, you have to give me your 110%, or you have to push. That is not an indicator to leave. The indicator to leave is when the programs are not doing anything, or what you want to achieve, it's not there. When it comes to discipline and commitment, stay there and you will be better.
So for me, it's always a conversation. Have the conversation. So coach, this is what I think. What do you think? First, have the conversation. So if there's a specific issue, coach, I don't think I'm improving in this. What do you think? Why this is the case? So have the conversation first, understand what is going on with the coach, let the coach know exactly what is going on with you. And one of the things that is interesting about that comment is that as coaches, you should have a player development plan. So you should have a plan of how I'm going to get this player from point A to point B. So it means that now you and the coach should go back to the plan and you'll be like, okay, this is where we said we would be at this particular point. I'm not here. What's the issue? So it's really having that conversation first with the coach to understand where you are in your head and what you're thinking and where the coach is. Then once the conversation is finished, then make an informed decision. So right now, if you're making a decision based off of your feeling, it's not informed. Try to get as much data as possible before you make the decision. Secondly, where am I going? You then have to have that conversation as well to understand, can they get me to where I need to be? So it might be a transfer to over there because the grass look a little green, but you really don't know it's artificial grass, really. So have the conversation on both sides. Check on where you are in the development plan. If it's not where you want to be, then you make the decision off of all of the information that you have. That's my little bit.
No, 100%. Anything to add?
Not really much more to add to that. I mean, I do think Shane and I had a similar experience when we were a lot younger, though, where we switched clubs just really because we knew the possibilities of what switching coaches would have had for us in terms of our goals in the sport. And yeah, you just need to make sure your goals align. You don't just do it in a way that rubs off a bad vibe. Like you just said, you have that conversation. You want to make sure that it's respectful, but at the same time, you need to have a common goal. You need to know that where you're going can get you to that goal that you like to achieve. So, yeah.
That pretty much encapsulates everything. Well, in squash it's difficult because all the coaches work together. You don't just have one coach assigned to one person. Everybody gets their chance with the coaches, but it's important to have that conversation, and you also need to work something together. That critical analysis is important. And while athletes have a voice, coaches have a voice too. And we can say, the problem is not us. You don't do anything at home. Let's fix. I mean, there are other issues that maybe let's work on this together. Let's fix this problem because you think the problem is us, but I think the problem is you. And maybe we want to get rid of you because you're not doing what we assign or we need from you. So that analysis is important on both sides, and that honest conversation is not just a conversation, it is an honest conversation. Because you can easily look at another player and think they're improving under another coach, but that player is putting in the work and you are not. So be honest with yourself, be honest with the coach, be honest with your parents, and be honest with your teammates. And it always begins with the conversation.
Yep, 100%. And then just to tie that up, I believe that respect, and I don't believe you could have effective communication without respect that goes both ways. There's a lot of athletes that I know and I've seen don't respect the coach, and there's a lot of coaches that I also know don't necessarily respect an athlete's journey. But I think that it really is, once you have that connection and that respect, it builds trust, it builds open communication, and I think that it's a team effort across the board. No matter what we talk about today, the one takeaway that has remained consistent is that it takes a team to build an athlete. Not just starting with the coaches, but with the coaches, the administration, the parents, the governing bodies, the government. You understand? It starts from a team effort. Sports is a societal thing. Sports can bring social cohesion, but it starts with respect. And respect then will open up communication and everything else that goes with it. That's not just sports, but that's just us as Vincentians, as Caribbean nationals. It must start with that, and I just want that to be the takeaway for sure, is that teamwork and respect are really what's going to make or break an athlete. And I think that really is the key to it all. So I want to take this time to, thank my panelists personally. It really was a pleasure to have this reasoning. And I think it's just the beginning of things to come. So please, yes, definitely. I think once we come together more like this and we can have these conversations more and understand each other, listen to each other, listening is really key. Don't enforce your beliefs on anybody, but listen and see where you could find that common ground, right? Coach-athlete relationship, find that common ground. And so, special thank you to you guys. It definitely was a pleasure. I also want to say thank you to our live streamers. I know STV Online has been very, very key. Steve Wallace is also an Olympian. He was one of my motivators as well, coming up as an athlete. So, that having that connection is really key. We have Partyland Decorations, who has helped us with the decor. We have Beachcombers Hotel, who has offered us this. Very grateful to them. At a restaurant as well. And I just want to continue to praise and everybody who comes together in these events. It really is key for us to really understand each other and also to be grateful. And I think gratitude goes a long way. So just to tie that all together, we do have a catering waiting for us at a restaurant. So please, after this is finished, you can walk through this door. If you haven't signed the registration sheet, please sign the registration sheet, because next steps, we always like to talk next steps, what's the action after this event. And the action after this event is that we want in August to host a workshop as an Athletes Commission. So that would be a mandatory attendance across the board with each sporting federation. And with this workshop, we want to be able to start building. An Athletes Commission should have at least 5 members, 5, 7, 9 members. And from that now, we can come together as a greater group, a greater athletes group, and then start to really, push the envelope. And I think that is key. So please stay informed. That will be in August. And I just really want to say thank you to everyone here right now live and everyone who tuned in virtually. It was a pleasure to be able to help us have this conversation. So big up everybody, and love and respect always.